right. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Honestly, and Gary, thanks for that introduction, and thank you for recognizing Toyota's long-standing activity and quality and supply chain. I'm really humbled and blessed to represent Toyota to receive this prestigious award. And it's really surprising. I've been with Toyota actually 36 plus years, so I've been in the supply chain for a while. So maybe afterwards we can talk a lot about that in detail. But I'm really excited that we have a chance to present to the supply chain students and the faculty. Toyota really cherishes the opportunity to share what we're doing and share TPS. And also we're going to talk a little bit about today what we're doing for the future of supply chain. So, kind of moving to our agenda on the second, I've got the controller, don't I? Oh, what, right button? Okay. Here we go. All right, I've got it. Okay, so to talk about the agenda, first we're going to take a look at Toyota by the numbers really briefly, and then I'm going to take some time to talk about TPS, and I'm going to say TPS instead of Toyota Production System every time, so TPS. And finally, we'll talk about what's going on specifically in North America and how we're merging TPS with the technology of today. So first, let's take a look at the numbers. So this is our some global information. As you can see, we have 68 manufacturing sites and 20 research and design sites globally. We also have 375,000 plus global employees. And in a normal year, we're selling and producing 9 to 10 million vehicles. In North America specifically, we produce and sell over 2 million vehicles, and we have about 63,000 employees. I would like to say that, Toyota regionally, we try to produce what we sell in those regions. So about 80% of what we sell is produced in North America. Let's take a look at the footprint. Maybe you guys are familiar with this, but we have 14 production locations with capacity to produce 2 million vehicles annually in North America. And also, if you didn't know, our headquarters is now in Plano, Texas. We used to have a headquarters in California near LA, Torrance, and we had a manufacturing headquarters in Kentucky near Cincinnati. We merged those about 8 years ago, very near, it's in basically the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and that's where the supply chain operations are headquartered. It's really important to understand that Toyota was not originally an automobile company. And through innovation that they mentioned, it grew into what it is today. So innovation is a really, really important part of our structure and Kaizen, and you guys know those words. But, now many people have studied TPS, but today I'm going to explain it from a little bit different perspective. Maybe you've heard it, maybe you haven't, but sometimes this is an important point that's missed. But TPS is an organization of highly engaged people, and it's sustained by a basic 3-part system. The first part of the system is philosophy. These 4 elements are 4 that I pulled that I feel like are maybe the most important of the core of this philosophy. One is we always talk about customer first. And sometimes we're talking about the final customer, but sometimes we're talking about the person who's going to receive the output of your work. So the next process in line. We also are focused on our people. Our people are the most important resource, and we always try to keep that mindset. And of course, the Kaizen mindset is really critical within the Toyota innovation process. And then shop floor focus. And you heard in the video, Taiichi Ohno's example is what started this. So even today, when we have issues or problem solving or Kaizen that we're doing, we ask our teams to go to the floor, go to the process, go to the dealership, wherever it is that we're trying to solve a problem or try to improve something. We go to the location. We call it going to the Gemba. The second part of the system is the technical piece, basically using our TPS tools correctly. So you may have heard of many of the tools. You heard some of that in the video, Kaizen, Jidoka, Heijunka. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And the third part of the system is the management role, to motivate and develop people to surface problems and innovate through Kaizen. Management is really important, must build this culture to ensure team members feel empowered. We want to feel empowered so we can do creative and continuously improve their processes. And of course, when that work's done or when that work's going on, we need to support and provide recognition as management. This results in a great people culture model. Organizational culture, one big point to remember, organizational culture and people development is the most important part of TPS. Now let's take a look at this image, and maybe you're familiar with this, but this is the TPS house, we call it. This image connects TPS from the supply chain to manufacturing to the final customer. Good TPS is always built on a strong, stable foundation With stability, a company can create strong standardized work and begin to use the tools of TPS effectively. Kaizen is not possible unless you understand that stable and baseline condition. Heijunka, another important point, is a critical component in the just-in-time pillar to ensure continuous flow and shortest lead times in the supply chain. Heijunka means, if you don't know, it's smoothing. So when we think about smoothing, how to create smooth flow, we start at the very beginning, from production planning all the way through to delivery to our dealerships to keep smooth flow. We also use Judoka in supply chain to ensure process quality and to quickly manage abnormalities. And we got a lot of that going on right now with hurricanes and port strikes. So we're using that all the time, even within the specifics of a process. Combine this with the culture piece, results in a high quality supply chain with low cost and short lead time. Okay. So this next slide, if you guys want to take a quick picture of this or whatever, this is a really good TPS tour for one of our plants, and it can explain how we're using TPS within one of our plants. I wanted to cover that item, and I'm going to hand it over to Jeff, who's going to talk a little bit more about the supply chain today. Thank you. Yep.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jeff Cawyer. I'm a group manager at Toyota. My group leads all the demand planning for North America. And I want to thank you all for having us and getting the opportunity, one, for the award and getting to share a little bit about Toyota. So wanted to first share a few pieces of some of the key components of our supply chain, and then want to talk about a big initiative that we have going on right now on digitizing our supply chain. So first want to touch on parts logistics, which ironically is Steve's group. So up here we have basically the LeBron James of parts logistics, or maybe here it would resonate more saying the Carmelo Anthony of parts logistics. But this is the group that makes sure that all the plants run smoothly by making sure that all of the parts are at the plant with that just-in-time mindset. And they have on here their vision, striving to be a global leader, providing the most advanced logistics service in the world based on foundations of TPS. They are supporting all 12 of our US or North American manufacturing plants, many cross docks. I'm always blown away by the business magnitude of them supporting nearly 1,800 suppliers with an annual mileage of 417 million miles to make sure that those plants are running smoothly. A lot of complexity that goes on that Steve's teams manage, and they do it phenomenally to make sure that our plants are running every single day. Just touching on what their two big responsibilities are, they own both the planning aspect of parts logistics and the operations aspects. So everything from route design and transportation efficiency, packaging and environmental, all the way to the very tactical of supplier development. The next group that I'm going to touch on is our vehicle logistics team. And I would view it as basically Steve's group is managing all the parts going into the plant. There, a lot of work to assemble the car. This group is then taking the finished goods from the plant and they are delivering it to the customer. And they would view themselves as they are the last Toyota hands to touch the car before we deliver a product to our dealerships. So these are located both at ports and at our manufacturing plants. This group is really important for a few different ways. One, as customers are more and more coming in and placing orders for cars that are not at a dealership today, this group is responsible for understanding and providing to that customer what's the ETA of that vehicle. Because we all know nothing is worse than being told you're going to get a product on a certain day and then it doesn't show up that day. And even your Domino's pizza these days, you can track it all the way through the oven and you know basically to the minute that your Domino's or when your Domino's pizza is going to get delivered. This group, with all of their processing of a vehicle, they are the linchpin of holding that ETA together and fulfilling that promise to the customer of when we will deliver that vehicle to them. They also do final quality assurance, vehicle processing. And I think actually one of the things that's really interesting here with this group, and I think it hits really well on that TPS mindset of just in time, and then also Toyota mindset of build, I'll butcher the Taiichi Ono interpretation of it earlier, but basically build only saleable products or only build what people want in the right quantity. with this group being the last corporate Toyota hands to touch a vehicle before we deliver it, they are actually responsible for installing different pieces onto the vehicle. And the reason for that is we want to wait until the very last minute when we truly know customer demand to install certain components onto the car. And they will actually tailor it dealer by dealer. So I think Romano Toyota down the street from here, they will not install certain parts on the car until we know which VIN is going to go to Romano. We will then work with Romano to understand what do their customers want, and then this group will install those components right before they ship it to that dealer. And that's a little bit different than how others do it, but it's in that mindset of just in time and building what customers want that we have this process of installing these at the last minute. The last group I'm going to touch on is the demand and supply team. This is the one that I work on. Our group, and it's actually a little bit unique. It's a legacy demand group and a legacy supply group that we have brought together with the goal of building, of planning and fulfilling the right car at the right quantity at the right time. So we do all things demand planning. So sales planning here on y'all's left, export planning, because the cars that we build here in the US are not just going to the US, they are going globally, vehicle ordering. So I would actually separate maybe the sales planning from the vehicle ordering. Is sales planning is looking at where is the battery electric market going to be 3 years from now? And how can we make sure that we have the infrastructure to support that? So that's very big and macro, all the way down to vehicle ordering, which is basically at the level of how many blue Corollas are we going to send to Romano Toyota next month? So it's this macro planning and then micro planning. And a lot of that's being powered by machine learning that we're building within Toyota that we'll touch on here in a second. Within our group, we also do production planning and then production allocation. So the Indiana plant is going to build a certain amount of Highlanders. We are responsible for figuring out globally where are we going to send those Highlanders so that they are best meeting customer demand around the world. So touched on a little bit the digital supply chain effort that we have going on. I think we would recognize that a lot of foundational supply chain priorities that we've all known of for a long time are here on the y'all's left of service, quality, cost, and capital, all centered around having a reliable supply chain. And I think we would even sometimes equate maybe supply chain of the past being almost like a utility company, like electricity, water. You expect things to be there, you flip a switch, and it's going on. But we recognize that supply chain has changed dramatically. And I think it got talked about earlier. Sustainability, customer expectations. I know we felt it very heavily with the semiconductor lack of supply in recent years. So really glad to hear about the growth in semiconductors close by. That supply chain is changing and evolving, and we want to be continually investing in growing our supply chain abilities to best meet customer expectations. So we would say all of those core supply chain principles, service, cost and capital, and quality, those are still there, but it's expanding and growing. Resilience. So how are we able to absorb shocks in the system with minimal disruption? Agility. How are we able to be even faster and more nimble with adapting to customer demand? And then sustainability. These are 3 new pieces that we're looking at investing heavily on, all with that customer-centric mindset of let's do all of these things to best support the customer. So it's a lot of really good ideas, but the systems and the infrastructure are what make all of this possible. Where up here, this is a core system for Toyota and has been a core system for Toyota for a long time. As you can tell, it is not looking particularly modern. The classic black and green screen. This is what we have run our supply chain off of for many years, and it's worked very well for its purpose. But we also recognize that when this system and infrastructure was set up, this was the car that we were selling. The cars have come quite a long ways. So we would recognize that continual investment and growth in the systems for a digital supply chain should be coming along with the products themselves. And hence, that's why there's been a really big push for a full end-to-end digital supply chain at Toyota with that customer-centric mindset. And I think it's also prompted some new types of discussions where I think we all recognize, and it was mentioned before, Kaizen. Kaizen is so core to Toyota. Continual improvement, like small improvement every single day. But I think we also recognize that another big element to this is this concept of kakushin, or big transformational leaps. And so maybe Kaizen, as you're making small steps every single day, there are big moments in time where you need these transformational leaps. And that's what we are looking at right now with our supply chain. One that's going on in Steve's group is a concept of end-to-end parts visibility. So at the bottom here, you obviously have the physical world, and there's a massive amount of work that goes on in that world every single day. But to ensure that you are having end-to-end parts visibility and you're getting resilience and agility and sustainability in your supply chain, you also want a digital model of it. So a really big push of having a digital twin for end-to-end supply chain so that you have that parts visibility all the way from suppliers to, in this case, our US or North American manufacturing centers. I will leave you with one last video, and again, appreciate the time for everybody.
Good morning, commuters. Looks like we got traffic backed up for miles. Starting with a downed tree blocking East Avenue and a broken water main causing a bottleneck on the westbound lanes. We've got weekend travelers flooding the turnpike, meaning it's bumper-to-bumper traffic for the foreseeable future. I'd get comfortable. You might be there for a while.
Toyota trucks. Let's go places.
Okay, couldn't do this without a cool, fun video of a bunch of trucks. So again, thank you everybody for your time.
Questions, if you have some questions for Toyota, just raise your hand, we'll come out.
And I know we are at a class break time, and some of you might have put off leaving. So if you do have to get to class, go. Don't
We have
wait.
so we have a question right here.
Thank you.
So for the students that are still here, I am the career advisor for supply chain and EEE students in Whitman. So I was wondering if you guys knew that you were going to get into supply chain, or how did you end up on the path that you did? You know, how'd you get here? I know a lot of students typically don't start off with supply chain. So what was your career path like?
Great question. I wanted to put some of that in my talk, but I didn't have enough time. But actually, when I graduated, I was an accounting degree and computer science degree. Had no idea about supply chain, but Toyota just announced that it was coming to US. It was the first overseas plant they ever built in Georgetown, Kentucky. And my father actually convinced me to go apply. So I actually worked on the production line the first year. And as I learned more about what was going on in the factory, I moved into an operations job, and that job basically was inside of what we call production control, which is really supply chain. Toyota didn't even use the word supply chain probably until maybe 5 years ago, to be honest with you. It's always been production control and logistics administration and those types of things. But we've adopted that now, and it was just a great fit. So I grew up through the organization and ultimately into the parts and logistics side.
Yeah, really appreciate the question. And similar to Steve, did not start out as a supply chain person. I was a finance major, and worked at a few different jobs, and then found my way to Toyota out in Los Angeles. Actually, I was living in Dallas. The company I was with was moving to Houston, and I pitched to my wife if she was interested in moving to Houston, which she was not. Which those that know Texas, Houston's very hot and humid. I knew that Toyota was out in Los Angeles and they were going to move to Dallas. I didn't know when, so I'd applied. They'd asked me to move out there, and thankfully pitching Los Angeles is a easier sales pitch than pitching Houston. So found myself moving out there, was in the finance department for a long time, and found myself in a role where we were helping support other departments with opportunities and insights. And it was one where at the time it felt a little bit silly because we were doing all this analysis in Excel, and then you create PowerPoints and PDFs. And by the time that you're going out and trying to provide insights to the business, it's 3 months too late. And people would say, yeah, that's really helpful, but I can't do anything with this now. So myself and the team started really embracing data analytics and lots of different tools that made it where we could get to insights a lot faster. And we used to be like 90% data prep, 10% analysis. And by really leaning into technology, we flipped it to 10% data prep, 90% analysis. And so then that kind of grew, and then financial planning then turned into demand planning, and through a windy road found myself with Steve over in supply chain.
Other questions?
Hi, gentlemen. Pat Penfield. I teach supply chain management at the school here. So quick question and thank you for coming. We really appreciate it, and congratulations on the award. So I noticed on your map that your manufacturing facilities are on the East Coast. So I assume you're probably getting a lot of your parts from the Port of Baltimore. So with the strike going on right now, how long until you're impacted? And what did you do to kind of, anticipate or prevent any disruption to your operation?
Yeah, another good question. Really busy with those issues today. And the other thing is the hurricane. We're having a pretty big impact in the southern area. There's a lot of suppliers in that region. So that's been a very active area as well. But on the port side, we don't have a lot of parts coming in on the East Coast. We have a few. So most of our stuff is coming in from the West, from Japan. But the parts that we are receiving on the East Coast, we did some preemptive activity and we moved those to the West Coast. So we were able to avoid any major impact. Now there are some gaps that we're having to close that hopefully will be small, but we're starting to feel it right now, right? So we're trying to make decisions. Oh, do you need to air freight, or do you need to expedite from the West Coast? Those kinds of decisions is what the team is making every day. Actually, today there's a lot of those kinds of decisions going on. Does that make sense?
Thank you for that. One more question here from a student.
Hi. So you guys worked for Toyota for a little while, and it's one of the most innovative supply chain companies in its field for almost 100 years probably now. What kind of strategies would you guys say help you sustain that supply chain advantage for so long over the past 100 years? And like looking into the future with technology and everything like that, how are you kind of tackling staying on top of the industry for so long?
Yeah, thank you. Great question. Jeff can take this one as well, but what I talked about earlier, I don't know if you were in the session before, but the Toyota production system is what we always use to stabilize and understand where we want to go. We always keep that as the basic message and method that we do things. So any situation that we have, we always go back to that. Are we following the Toyota production system? Do we need to reflect on what happened? Do we need to do something different? So continuously learning and Kaizening and improving is the way that's been done. It's worked and it works very well. But then, Jeff talked a lot about how to use innovation in the systems to complement that. But structurally, that's what we're set into. So one thing I didn't mention about TPS is that, there's a lot of discussion about problem solving within the system, but there's also the Kaizen side. So, I talked about stability. So if you're not hitting your baseline and you're below that, then you're problem solving. But if you're hitting your baseline, how do you make it leap up to create a better environment? That's the Kaizen piece. So there's a difference between problem solving and Kaizen, and we have to teach our folks to do that. Yeah.
So we have time for one more question. I got one question here.
So previously, I would imagine you guys would use like algorithms to figure out where you would put these vehicles for customers. So how does AI make this better? As well as how do you plan to offset the increase in emissions associated from AI usage?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think on the first piece of that, AI and machine learning make the decisions, one, so much faster and so much smarter, really simply, where I think before we're trying to send products globally. And it's not just like, how many Highlanders do you send globally? It's like, how many blue LEs with moon roofs and upgraded audios do you send to this city? And that, of course, is very challenging. And I mean, pre-AI ML, you really can't feasibly make those decisions. There's just too many of them. So you make some assumptions, you have some rules, and you kind of, for lack of better terms, you can kind of peanut butter spread things across of, yeah, we're just going to take this cluster of states and let's just send these cars here, and it should be close enough. But now with AI and ML, you can just get so much more precise with the decisions. And you can also kind of shift the team member experience, where before it was team members doing heavy lifting for everything and just grinding through data. Well, now you actually flip it and they're doing exception-based analysis. So if you're going to make 1 million decisions, well, if 950,000 of them go as you want, well, then they can focus on that last 50,000 that really matters. And so we're seeing really big changes of both the granularity that we can analyze at, the speed that we can analyze at, and getting much better decisions. I think the second part of your question, emissions from AI, AI is obviously very energy intensive. I know that, and actually, I'm probably not the most qualified to speak on this. It's probably more of our IT department than myself, but I know it's one we have a lot of governance on, and a lot of rigor around when that gets used. Frankly, right now, we're actually using a lot more machine learning than AI. I think AI is starting to grow, but we're finding a lot of really positive use cases from machine learning, and either going like deep learning models or tree-based models, things like that. Probably in about 3 years, I'll have a much better answer to your question on how are we managing the AI piece.
Okay, thank you very much.